The world had grown soft. Complacent, it had forgotten the terror of the Northmen, the sting of steel, the bite of the cold north wind. Then he returned, Ragnar Lothbrok, the All-Fatherson, a legend thought lost to time. He emerged from the mists of history, his eyes burned with the fires of Valhalla. He had returned to claim what was his, to usher in a new Viking age. The year was 2019. 5 years ago, the impossible happened. Ragnar Lothbrok, scourge of the ancient world, reappeared, not a descendant, but the man himself. He had walked the earth for centuries, unseen, biding his time. Now was the hour of his return, the hour of the Viking. Lothbrok did not return empty-handed. He brought with him 3 Jarls, mighty warriors. These were his champions, his heralds of war. They would spread his word, enforce his will. Resistance was futile. Submission was the only option. The All-Fatherson had returned, and the world would tremble before him. His message was simple: kneel or be crushed. The old ways were dead. The time of peace and prosperity was over. The world would once again know the iron fist of Viking rule. From the ashes of the old world, a new order would rise. An order forged in blood and fire. An order ruled by the All-Fatherson and his loyal Jarls. The world held its breath. The Viking age had begun anew. First among Lothbrok's lieutenants was Son of the Stars Galactic Gaming. A master strategist, his mind was a weapon as sharp as any axe. He saw the battlefield not in flesh and blood, but in ones and zeros. His domain was the digital world, and he bent it to his will with the ease of a master coder. His fingers danced across keyboards, launching devastating cyber attacks that crippled nations. Galactic Gaming was a warrior of the modern age. He waged war, not on battlefields, but in the digital ether. His weapon was information, and he wielded it with deadly precision. He could shut down power grids, cripple communication networks, and bring entire countries to a standstill. His power was absolute in the digital realm, paving the way for Lothbrok's conquest. But Galactic Gaming was more than just a master hacker. He was a cunning tactician, able to predict his enemies' moves before they made them. He used his knowledge of the digital world to gather intelligence and outmaneuver his opponents. He was the silent assassin, the unseen hand that guided Lothbrok's forces to victory. His loyalty to Lothbrok was absolute. He saw in the All-Fatherson a kindred spirit, a fellow warrior who understood the true meaning of power. Together, they would reshape the world in their image. Galactic Gaming would be the architect of this new order, the one who brought the world to its knees and prepared it for Lothbrok's rule. The digital age belonged to him, and through him to the All-Fatherson. Where Galactic Gaming was the master of the virtual, Millresh, the unliving host, commanded the spectral. A being of ancient power, Millresh had cheated death countless times, his body a patchwork of necromantic energy. He commanded legions of the dead, a horrifying army that marched at his command, impervious to pain or fear. They were a force of nature, a tide of bone and rot that swept across the land, consuming all in its path. Millresh was a figure of dread, a nightmare given form. His touch brought not life, but a chilling, unending cold. He was a harbinger of death, a reminder that even in the modern world, some things were best left undisturbed. His laughter echoed across battlefields, a chilling symphony of bone on bone, a promise of suffering and despair. The unliving host was a weapon of terror unleashed upon those who dared defy Lothbrok's will. Cities fell silent at their approach, the streets deserted, save for the shuffling of countless undead feet. Armies broke and ran before them, driven mad by the sight of their fallen comrades returned to life as instruments of destruction. Millresh cared nothing for the squabbles of mortals. He served Lothbrok out of a sense of ancient obligation, a debt owed from a time beyond memory. He was a force of destruction, a weapon to be wielded, and he would continue to serve his master until the world itself crumbled to dust. His was the cold embrace of oblivion, and from that embrace there was no escape.
Grandpa USA, the wielder of Excalibur, stood at the precipice of his conscience. He looked out over the conquered city, the streets littered with rubble and the faint scent of smoke clinging to the air. His hand tightened around the hilt of the legendary blade, its cold steel a familiar weight against his calloused palm. Victory. The word felt hollow in his mouth. He had fought alongside Ragnar Lothbrok, had witnessed the Allfatherson's ruthless efficiency in battle. He had seen cities crumble, nations fall, all beneath the weight of the Viking onslaught. And with each victory, a seed of doubt grew within him. Was this truly the way? Was this the future he had envisioned when he first took up Excalibur?
The faces of the vanquished haunted his dreams, the fear in their eyes, the despair in their pleas for mercy. These were not the enemies he had imagined. These were not the monsters Lothbrok painted them to be. They were ordinary people caught in the crosshairs of a war they did not ask for. His heart, once filled with the fire of a warrior, now ached with a dull, persistent pain. He had always believed in fighting for what was right, for protecting the innocent. But as the conquest continued, he began to question which side he was truly on. Was he a liberator or a conqueror, a hero or a villain?
The weight of my doubts grew heavier with each passing day. I watched as Galactic Gaming unleashed his digital fury upon the world, crippling infrastructure and sowing chaos. I saw the terror in the eyes of those who faced Millresh, the unliving host, their screams echoing in my ears long after the battle had ended. This was not the Viking way I had been raised on. The Vikings of old, they fought for land, for resources, for glory. But this felt different. This felt like something darker, something more sinister. Lothbrok's ambition seemed to know no bounds, his hunger for power insatiable.
He spoke of ushering in a new Viking age, but at what cost? How much blood had to be spilled, how many lives shattered, before his thirst for conquest was sated?
And what of Excalibur? The legendary blade, once a symbol of hope and justice, now felt tainted in my grasp. It had tasted too much blood, had been used to inflict too much suffering. The magic of the blade seemed to whisper in my ear, urging me to reconsider, to question the path I was on.
Grandpa USA, the seasoned warrior, the wielder of Excalibur, found himself lost in a sea of doubt. The line between right and wrong, once so clear, had become blurred. He could no longer ignore the nagging voice in his head, the one that told him something was terribly wrong. He had to make a choice, and soon, before it was too late. The seeds of rebellion, sown in the fertile ground of Grandpa USA's doubt, began to sprout. He sought solace in the quiet moments, away from the clamor of war and the thunderous pronouncements of Lothbrok. He found himself drawn to the whispers of dissent, the hushed conversations of those who, like him, questioned the righteousness of their cause.
I discovered pockets of resistance forming in the shadows, small groups of disillusioned Vikings and courageous civilians, united in their opposition to Lothbrok's tyranny. They were outmatched, outgunned, but their spirits remained unbroken. They still believed in a better world, a world free from fear and oppression.
Their courage resonated with him, rekindling a spark of hope in his weary heart. These were not the enemies he had been led to believe they were. These were people fighting for their freedom, for their right to exist. Their fight was just, their cause noble.
How could I, the wielder of Excalibur, stand idly by and allow them to be crushed? I began to share my doubts, cautiously at first, testing the waters. To my surprise, I found many who shared my misgivings. Vikings who had joined Lothbrok's banner seeking glory, now disillusioned by the brutality they were ordered to inflict. Civilians forced into servitude, yearning for the day they would be free again.
The conflict escalated, a wildfire consuming the dry tinder of a world caught off guard. Grandpa USA, wrestling with his conscience, knew he could no longer remain a silent observer. The time for contemplation was over. The hour for action had arrived.
I chose to stand with the oppressed, with the dreamers who dared to envision a world free from Lothbrok's iron grip. My first target, son of the stars, Galactic Gaming. The digital warlord had woven a web of control around the globe, his algorithms dictating the flow of information, his cyber attacks crippling the forces of resistance. To break Lothbrok's hold, I knew I had to dismantle Galactic Gaming's digital fortress, brick by virtual brick.
But how does one fight an enemy who exists as lines of code, a phantom in the machine? Grandpa USA, a warrior of flesh and blood, felt a profound sense of displacement in this ethereal realm. He needed a strategy, a way to turn the digital battlefield to his advantage, to make the intangible tangible.
My gaze fell upon Excalibur, the blade humming with ancient energy. Perhaps the answer lay not in modern technology, but in the magic of old.
He sought out those who understood the language of the digital world, hackers and programmers who had turned their skills against Lothbrok's regime. They were an unlikely band of rebels, more comfortable behind keyboards than on battlefields, but their ingenuity and courage matched that of any warrior. Together, they devised a daring plan, a gamble to infiltrate Galactic Gaming's network and turn his own weapons against him. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. Grandpa USA, a beacon of defiance in a world cowering under Lothbrok's rule, would act as bait, drawing Galactic Gaming's attention, forcing the digital warlord to focus his considerable resources on crushing this single, seemingly insignificant threat.
It went against every instinct I possessed. I was a warrior, accustomed to facing my enemies head-on, steel meeting steel. To be a pawn in a larger game, to rely on subterfuge and misdirection, felt alien, almost dishonorable. But I pushed aside these misgivings, reminding myself that the lives of millions hung in the balance. Sometimes the most difficult battles were fought not with brute force, but with cunning and sacrifice.
He allowed rumors of his disillusionment to spread, whispers of rebellion carried on the wind. He staged small acts of sabotage, enough to attract attention, but not enough to reveal his true intentions. He became a ghost, a phantom flickering at the edge of Lothbrok's awareness, always just out of reach.
And Galactic Gaming took the bait. The digital warlord, arrogant in his mastery of the virtual realm, could not resist the challenge. He poured his resources into hunting me down, diverting his attention from the growing resistance movement. He saw it as a game, a puzzle to be solved, unaware that he was walking into a carefully laid trap.
The digital world became a battleground unlike any Grandpa USA had ever encountered. He fought alongside his newfound allies, their fingers flying across keyboards, their minds locked in a fierce struggle for control of the virtual realm. Lines of code scrolled across screens, a language he barely understood, yet he felt the power they contained, the potential for both creation and destruction.
Galactic Gaming, a master of deception, created digital illusions, virtual traps designed to ensnare and confuse. I found myself battling phantom enemies, navigating treacherous digital landscapes that shifted and morphed with each passing moment. I felt a growing sense of disorientation, a blurring of the lines between reality and simulation.
Yet, amidst the digital chaos, Excalibur remained a beacon of hope, its ancient magic resonating with a power that transcended the virtual realm. It disrupted Galactic Gaming's algorithms, creating fissures in his digital fortress. The blade, forged in a time before technology, had become a weapon against technology itself.
As the battle raged, I realized that even in this ethereal realm, courage and determination still held sway. My allies, though lacking my physical prowess, fought with a ferocity that belied their stature. They were David facing Goliath, their slingshots crafted from code and willpower.
The tide of the digital war began to turn. Grandpa USA's allies, emboldened by his presence and inspired by his unwavering resolve, launched a series of counterattacks, exploiting weaknesses in Galactic Gaming's defenses. They sowed disinformation, disrupted communication channels, and turned the digital warlord's own surveillance network against him.
Galactic Gaming, accustomed to effortless victories in the digital realm, found himself on the defensive. His algorithms, once considered unbreakable, faltered under the relentless assault. He had underestimated his opponents, their tenacity, their refusal to yield. He had made a fatal error, allowing his arrogance to cloud his judgment.
Grandpa USA, sensing his enemy's faltering resolve, pressed the attack. He rallied his allies, urging them forward, reminding them of what was at stake. This was not just a battle for control of the digital world, it was a fight for the soul of humanity, for the right to determine their own destiny. The digital landscape crackled with energy as the two forces clashed. A maelstrom of code and willpower. The fate of the world, it seemed, hung precariously in the balance. The final confrontation was swift and decisive. Grandpa USA, guided by his allies and wielding Excalibur, struck a decisive blow against Galactic Gaming's defenses.
The victory was hard won, a testament to the courage and ingenuity of my allies.
Yet Grandpa USA felt no sense of triumph, only a grim satisfaction.
The war was far from over, but for now, I allowed myself a moment of respite. I had faced an enemy unlike any I had encountered before and had found a way to prevail.
The weight of victory pressed heavily upon Grandpa USA's shoulders. He had struck a blow against Lothbrok's regime, but at what cost?
I had tasted the seductive allure of power, the intoxicating rush that came with wielding such vast technological might.
He had chosen to fight for freedom, for the right of individuals to determine their own destiny.
These doubts gnawed at me, whispering insidious suggestions in the quiet moments. Could I trust myself to wield such power responsibly? Could any mortal?
Grandpa USA, his face etched with the weariness of battle, looked out over the devastated landscape.
I had chosen my path, had committed myself to the fight against Lothbrok. There was no turning back.
He had tasted victory, felt the allure of power, yet clung to his ideals.
The path ahead was uncertain, but I, the wielder of Excalibur, would face the coming storm with courage and resolve. I would see this fight through to the end, no matter the cost.
News of Galactic Gaming's defeat spread like wildfire, igniting hope in the hearts of the oppressed.
My name became a symbol of resistance, a beacon of defiance against Lothbrok's tyranny.
His gaze turned north towards the icy heart of Lothbrok's domain, where a different kind of evil stirred. Millresh, the unliving host, sensing weakness, gathered his forces.
An endless tide of rotting flesh and bone, animated by dark magic, amassed at the borders of the free world.
Grandpa USA knew he couldn't ignore this threat.
The task seemed insurmountable. How do you fight an enemy that knows no fear, that cannot be reasoned with?
It was a prospect that chilled him to the bone, yet he knew he had no choice. The city of Paris, once a beacon of light and culture, now cowered under the oppressive shadow of the unliving host.
The River Seine, once a shimmering ribbon of life, flowed black with the taint of death.
Grandpa USA, leading a ragtag army of survivors, arrived at the city's outskirts.
My heart ached for the fallen, for the city that had become a graveyard.
He looked upon the faces of those who followed him, their eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and determination.
I would not let them down. I rallied my troops, my voice echoing through the desolate streets. I reminded them of all we were fighting for, of the families we sought to protect.
And as he spoke, he felt a surge of defiance rise within him. They would fight with everything they had, for even in the face of overwhelming darkness, hope could still find a foothold. The battle for Paris was a symphony of horror and heroism. Grandpa USA, wielding Excalibur with deadly grace, cut a swathe through the ranks of the undead.
But for every fallen enemy, countless more surged forward, driven by an ancient hunger.
Grandpa USA's allies fought with the courage of desperation, knowing that surrender was not an option.
Casualties were heavy. For every undead warrior that fell, another of my soldiers joined their ranks.
Yet he fought on, driven by a sense of duty, by the desperate hope that their sacrifice would not be in vain. Days turned into nights as the battle raged on. Grandpa USA, his body weary, knew he couldn't defeat Millresh through brute force alone.
It was a desperate gamble, a suicide mission by any other name.
He gathered his remaining commanders, their faces haggard, their eyes reflecting the horrors they had witnessed.
I have to gamble everything on this one. Desperate throw of the dice.
He laid out his plan, an audacious strike at the heart of the enemy's power.
It's a long shot, a near impossible task, but it's the only chance we have.
Grandpa USA, his jaw set, his eyes burning with a fierce light, prepared to face his destiny. The path to Millresh was a gauntlet of death. Grandpa USA and his small band of warriors carved their way through the heart of the unliving host.
But we pressed on, driven by the slim hope that our sacrifice might mean something.
Grandpa USA, his senses sharpened by desperation, moved with a speed and ferocity that belied his age. Excalibur, bathed in an ethereal glow, cut through flesh and bone.
So the mortal champion comes to challenge death itself. You are a fool, Grandpa USA.
We shall see. Your reign of terror ends here, Millresh. Today you face the judgment of Excalibur.
The clash between Grandpa USA and Millresh was a thing of legend. Excalibur, infused with the strength of Grandpa USA's will, blazed with a light that banished the shadows.
Fueled by the righteous fury of 1,000 fallen comrades, I pressed my attack.
He fought with the strength of 10 men, his every blow infused with the desperate hope that he could end this nightmare.
But victory had come at a terrible cost.
Grandpa USA, his life force spent, slumped to his knees, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He had stared into the abyss and emerged victorious but not unscathed. The victory against Millresh was a Pyrrhic one. Paris, once a radiant jewel of civilization, lay in ruins, its streets littered with the debris of battle. Grandpa USA, his body racked with pain, his spirit weary beyond measure, surveyed the scene with a heavy heart. Excalibur, once a beacon of hope, felt heavy in his grasp, its once gleaming surface now dull. He felt a profound sense of emptiness settling over him, a chilling premonition that his time was drawing to a close. As the shadows lengthened and the last vestiges of daylight faded from the sky, a lone figure emerged from the ruins. Ragnar Lothbrok, the All-Fatherson, stood before Grandpa USA, his eyes blazing with a cold fire. He had come to witness the aftermath of the battle, to see for himself the handiwork of his former champion.
You have defied me for the last time, old man. You have chosen your path, and now you will face the consequences.
Grandpa USA, summoning the last reserves of his strength, rose to meet his gaze. He was no longer the warrior he once was, but he would face his destiny with courage and dignity. He had made his choice, had pledged his allegiance to a different kind of power, and he would not back down now.
I have seen the darkness you would unleash upon the world, Lothbrok. I have witnessed the depths of your ambition, the price of your so-called new Viking age. And I will not stand idly by while you drag humanity back into the abyss.
You are my most trusted Jarl, Grandpa USA, Lothbrok said, his voice laced with a hint of regret. I offered you a place by my side, a chance to share in the glory of a new world order. But you chose to betray me, to side with these weaklings. He gestured towards the remnants of Grandpa USA's forces, the weary survivors who had gathered to witness the confrontation. They were but a shadow of their former strength, their numbers depleted, their spirits broken. Yet in their eyes, Lothbrok saw a flicker of the same defiance that burned within Grandpa USA.
I fight for a different kind of world, Lothbrok. A world where freedom reigns, where the strong do not prey upon the weak. A world where the mistakes of the past are not repeated.
Then you are a fool. The strong will always rule, old man. It is the way of the world, and you, like all those who stand against me, will be swept aside.
He turned to leave, his cloak billowing behind him like a shroud.
One last battle, Grandpa USA. Meet me at dawn on the shores of Normandy. Let us settle this once and for all.
As darkness enveloped the ravaged city, Grandpa USA gathered his remaining strength. He knew this was his final battle, the culmination of his long and arduous journey. He had faced countless enemies, had stared death in the face time and time again, but now, At the end of all things, he felt a strange sense of peace. The whispers of Ragnarok, the Norse legend of the final battle between the gods and the giants, echoed in his mind. It was a tale of destruction and renewal, of the end of an era and the birth of a new world. And tonight, he realized, he was fated to play his part in that ancient drama.
He spent the long dark hours before dawn in prayer and meditation, seeking solace and guidance from a power greater than himself. He knew that he faced an impossible task, that victory against Lothbrok in his current state was beyond his reach. But he would face his destiny with courage and resolve, knowing that his sacrifice would not be in vain.
As the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, he donned his battered armor, the weight of it both familiar and comforting. He strapped Excalibur to his side, the blade humming softly, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. He was ready. The shores of Normandy, once stained with the blood of countless battles, became the stage for one final epic confrontation. The air crackled with anticipation as Grandpa USA and Lothbrok faced each other across a stretch of windswept sand. The waves crashed against the shore, their rhythmic roar a somber counterpoint to the clash of steel that was to come. The sky above, a canvas of swirling greys and blues, seemed to mirror the turmoil that raged within the hearts of the two warriors.
They circled each other warily, their movements those of predators sizing up their prey. The years had taken their toll on both men, but the fire of battle still burned brightly within them, fueled by a lifetime of conflict and a fierce determination to see their respective visions for the world realized. "You fight with the courage of a true Viking, Grandpa USA," Lothbrok said, his voice grudgingly respectful, "but it is not enough. You are but a shadow of your former self, your strength fading with each passing moment."
"I fight for something more than just strength, Lothbrok," Grandpa USA replied, his voice firm despite his weariness. "I fight for freedom, for justice, for a future free from the tyranny you would impose."
The clash, when it came, was swift and brutal. Lothbrok, his strength and speed undiminished by time, pressed the attack, his axe a whirlwind of death that Grandpa USA struggled to deflect. Excalibur, though lacking its former brilliance, still held its own, its ancient magic deflecting blows that would have felled a lesser warrior.
But I knew I couldn't win. I was outmatched, outmaneuvered, my body betraying me with every move. Yet I refused to yield. I would fight until my last breath, knowing that even in defeat, my sacrifice would inspire others to carry on the fight.
With a roar of triumph, Lothbrok disarmed Grandpa USA, sending Excalibur spinning across the sand. He raised his axe for the final blow, his eyes cold and merciless.
"You fought bravely, old friend, but your time is over. The future belongs to those who are strong enough to seize it."
He brought his axe down in a swift, decisive arc. The world mourned the loss of Grandpa USA. His death, a sacrifice made in the name of freedom and justice, sent shockwaves across the globe. Lothbrok, though victorious, had not escaped unscathed. The battle with Grandpa USA, his former friend and most trusted Jarl, had taken its toll, leaving him scarred and weary.
The seeds of doubt that I had sown continued to grow, taking root in the hearts of those who had witnessed my courage and unwavering belief in a better world.
The resistance, far from being crushed, found renewed purpose in his sacrifice. They would fight on, inspired by his memory, determined to build the world he had envisioned. A world free from tyranny, where the spirit of freedom reigned supreme. And so, the legacy of Grandpa USA, the wielder of Excalibur, lived on, a beacon of hope in a world still struggling to free itself from the shackles of the past. His name became synonymous with courage, with selflessness, with the unwavering belief that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit could overcome any obstacle. He was a hero for the ages, a symbol of the enduring power of hope. Silence fell upon the shores of Normandy. The waves, as if in mourning, lapped gently at the blood-stained sand. The wind, which moments before had carried the clash of steel and the roar of battle, now whispered through the dunes, a mournful dirge for the fallen. Lothbrok stood alone, his axe heavy in his hand, its edge still wet with the blood of his former friend.
Victory had never tasted so bitter. The world, mine for the taking, felt empty, devoid of the glory I had sought for so long.
The whispers of Ragnarok, once a distant echo, now thundered in his ears, shaking the very foundations of his being. He had won, yet in that victory he had lost something irreplaceable. The silence was shattered by the soft sobs of the fallen warriors' allies. They emerged from the dunes, their faces etched with grief, their eyes reflecting the horror of what they had witnessed. Yet amidst the sorrow there was a glimmer of something else, something akin to hope. Grandpa USA in his final moments had shown them the true meaning of courage. He had faced down a god among men not for power but for principle. He had sacrificed himself so that others might live free from fear. And in that sacrifice he had ignited a spark that even Lothbrok's iron grip could not extinguish. News of Grandpa USA's death spread across the ravaged world, carried on the winds of change. The world which had cowered under Lothbrok's shadow stirred. The spark of rebellion, ignited by Grandpa USA's defiance, burst into a raging inferno. From the ruins of shattered cities, a new generation of warriors rose. They bore no single banner, owed allegiance to no king or conqueror. They were united by a shared ideal, a belief in a world where freedom reigned. The world would never forget Grandpa USA, the warrior who had dared to defy a god. And though he was gone, his legacy lived on, a beacon of hope in a world yearning for light. It was a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity, a testament to the idea that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, hope could still find a